Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on Lutheran Answers. How you doing?
Doing okay. It's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks. We had a really big wedding at our church, and we were involved in that. It was our senior pastor's daughter got married, so
Oh
a
wow,
really big deal. And my kids were in it, and we were in it, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. And so that was last week, and then this week we've been trying to recover. And of course, my kids got sick, of course, and all
of
that. And
course.
so crazy.
Yeah.
And we also have family in Florida, so we've been worried
Yeah.
about them, but they're all okay. Everyone's good. So,
Good. Good.
so how
Yeah.
are you?
I'm all right, man. Tired, just working and school and everything else. Just getting through it. Thank you for asking. That's
Yeah,
sweet.
of course.
So we were talking a little bit before we got started here, and you're a DCE, and you come from a long line of DCEs
Mm-hmm.
or educators in general, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. My
Recap recap that for me.
yeah. So I've been a DCE for almost 10 years now. I'm currently serving in the Houston, Texas area. Before that, I was on Long Island, New York. Um, that's a distinction. You can't say in Long Island. You have to say on Long
On.
Island. Yeah.
Okay.
What I learned that I'm not from there, so um, but yeah. So it's been I got my DCE certification at Concordia University in Chicago, um, and that was great. My father is a DCE. Now he does primarily music ministry. He's an organist and choir director, but he also did youth ministry before that. And his parents were both Lutheran educators. My grandmother taught kindergarten for like 40 some years.
Oh wow.
My grandfather was a teacher and then a principal in Lutheran schools for a long time. And yeah, so it's kind of run in the family. This Lutheran education has always been a part of who I am, and hopefully will continue for a long time.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. What's your favorite part about being a DCE?
I love I love lots of about being a DCE. Probably one of my favorite parts is the awesome people that I get to work with, like other DCEs and other pastors, being able to connect with other Lutheran teachers and learn from them and grow with them and talk to them. And the ministry team that I have, and even not, it's just me and my pastor at my church, which is great. But, just in our district, we have other DCEs and other workers and professionals that I get to connect with regularly. And, the Lutheran world being kind of small, I really enjoy that because I really love meeting people and seeing what they're doing. And yeah, just we're all going about the same mission in lots of different ways, and it's really cool to see what other people do and grow with them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, for those not in the know, what is a DCE?
Yeah, yeah. So it stands for Director of Christian Education, and it is in the LCMS it is a commissioned minister. So I am not ordained. I do not have the collar, therefore I cannot, do the cool pastor stuff like communion or, absolution or anything like that. But I can teach. It's a lot of teaching. I so at my current call, what I do is I run the youth ministry, so I run youth group and youth Bible studies. I do teach a lot of confirmation classes. I'll sub in for a pastor if he can't do an adult Bible study one week, and visit people and hang out with them, and especially kids, youth. I help run the Sunday school, make sure all the teachers know what's going on, and all that stuff. So it's a lot of education, a lot of making sure that others, equipping volunteers to teach as well. Making sure everything's on the up and up, evaluating the curriculums that we use and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's primarily what I do, and I also get to play games a lot because I work with kids, and kids love to play games. So we get to play
Sure.
games and eat pizza and have fun, and um, go to church and just and enjoy life.
What's the most like nerve-wracking part do you think of being a DCE?
The nerve wracking part is when the normal nerve wracking stuff of life happens, and you have a lot of fun with kids, but then also teenagers especially go through stuff, and they go through stuff
Yeah,
fairly intensely, and so you never know when uh, you know a young man comes to youth group one week and you can tell something's going on, and you pull him aside maybe and you find out the real stuff that's going on in life that he's not going to share all the time, but you know if he trusts you enough to talk to you about it, that's great, and I love being there for him, but also, man, some of these kids are going through some tough stuff.
yeah.
So it's fulfilling and also really hard.
How do you build that trust?
I find you keep showing up. Um, a
Wow.
lot a
Yeah.
lot of teenagers they're very if they want to know that you're going to be there, and they get burned by people leaving, they get burned by teachers, they move on, they're no longer with their favorite teachers, or
Right.
even they have family members leave or pass away or things like that, and other churches, pastors take calls, people leave, this, that, and the other thing. So the more that you can say to them, well, I'm here, and then prove it by being there, they'll trust you a little bit more. So a lot of times that looks like, you know, going to their sports games and choir concerts and theatrical shows and stuff, and then just being there on a Sunday. Like, yeah, I'm here. We've got Bible study every week. I've got it, and I'll be here, and I'll keep being here, and eventually they start trusting you, and they start showing up too, because you show up, and they keep showing up.
I'm sorry, I'm taking notes.
Yeah, yeah, you're good.
I realized very quickly into this conversation it was going to be a note-taking conversation for me.
It's
Oh
probably good
man.
that it's being recorded then, so you can make sure you don't
Yeah.
miss anything.
Yeah. Yeah, show up for your people, man. That's huge.
Mm.
So, you mentioned the youth and doing the youth groups and whatnot. Do the kids, do you find that they want contemporary worship? Do they want liturgy? Do they care?
They do care. I've got a great mix of both. There's some kids that are, and so we have two services at our church, one of each, you could say. And I've got some kids that they're at that 8 o'clock service and they love it, and that's the one they want to be at. And then there's others that are at the 10:30 service and they love that one. And in our church, at least, the difference is not, we do liturgical things at both services.
Right.
So the first service is straight up out of whichever setting we're using that month, and the second service is the same things, just with guitars and slightly different words, but it's the same.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So
So it's
yeah, and
kind of
they
blended.
care, and they like having options. I think they enjoy and again, a lot of it is about their people. If they've got their friends
Sure.
who go to one service or another, then they're like, no, I need to go to the early service because that's where the people that care about me go. So.
It you mentioned their people, their
Hmm.
friends or whatever. I guess and it may be because you're at a Lutheran school, so I guess maybe it's a bit different than like public school kids who maybe, I'm sure you have a few of those as well.
Hmm.
But it seems to me then that it's very important to build sort of a culture with the kids in your youth group, in your confirmation class, so that the kids they're being peer pressured by are other Christian kids who are peer pressuring them to come to one worship service or another, as
Hmm.
opposed to like doing drugs and driving fast cars or whatever.
Right. Right. Yeah. Actually, we have a good variety of different public schools around here, that we pull from. So, and it's actually I could go into a whole other tangent about seeing the shift in education over the last few years, but that's a that's beyond me sometimes. But the yeah, knowing that they have a group at church that wants them to be at church, and it all, not just kids, but like adults,
Right.
what, like, if they know that there are adults at church that like seeing them and like talking to them. It's so funny. One of the teenage girls that I have has formed a really strong connection with our pastor's mom,
Oh, wow.
and she's in her 80s, but they love talking to each other and they love having conversations with each other. And so that's one of those relationships that, like,
Yeah.
she only sees her at church, but like she makes sure to go talk to her at church, and that's like a really cool relationship that she has, that's intergenerational, and that it's that kind of stuff. When we're talking about the body of Christ, the more time goes on, the more I realize, like, in the 90s, I think everybody tried to silo everybody, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't do that. We should just have everybody be together.
Do you know of Josh Craig?
I've heard of him, yes.
Do you know Maddie Craig from Twitter? Madeline
I think,
Craig?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Her husband. He's a DCE.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had him on a few times, and that's his big thing, is like a holistic family approach, that we shouldn't be segregating people by age or whatever else. Like, we should all be here together, and that the
Mm-hmm.
more, I mean, and especially because nowadays with so many blended or broken families, you never know what kid out there needs a mom, what kid out there needs a dad. And the church has, like, just overflowing with moms and dads and grandparents and cousins and brothers and sisters that are just ready, to
Absolutely,
pull you in.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw that play out absolutely. We had a couple of brothers who their father, sadly passed away from cancer, right when I got here, and so I didn't have a super established relationship with them, but there are other, men in the church. We try to have our elders make sure that they are always talking to them and saying hi, and trying to form those relationships. Because
Yeah.
it's hard, and they don't have a dad right now, and it's like that sucks. But like they know that there are people at church that love them and care about them at least, and we start there.
Yeah. 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 Not to shift gears too hard here, but how do you teach confirmation? I would just say how do you teach, but that just seems too open-ended.
Well, how do you teach confirmation is not that much,
Not that much better.
not that much better, but I could give it a shot. Um, I, we use is it Peter Bender wrote a whole thing
Hmm.
for confirmation. We use his stuff. But our pastor has taught confirmation for years, and so he gave me his notebook. Like, he's like, copy this when I got here, and so I made a copy. So it's got all of his notes, on the side and stuff. So we go through the catechism. We always hit, it's 2 years, and we hit the commandments every year because you always can, and then you do creed, Lord's prayer, baptism, Lord's Supper. You kind of weave it all throughout the whole thing, and we just meet every week, and we try to get through a little bit of it at a time. And usually we go down extreme rabbit holes, because that's what kids do. You're talking to them and you're teaching them stuff, and then they go, "But wait, doesn't that mean this?" And so then you end up in a completely different area than you did before, which is just awesome. Like, I love being able to go with them on those journeys and figure out what do they want to know. Like, if they're asking questions, let's follow that and see where it leads. What does the Bible say about that? Like, that's extremely, important and good that they are getting those questions answered. So, um, we always try to make them think a little bit beyond what's just kind of there on the page. So, and we always try to make sure that they are looking things up we want them by the end of the 2 years. I want them to know how to use their Bible so they can go find things and go look at, if a question comes up, we teach them about using a concordance and what that looks like and what that means. And we do it in a really fun, cool way, but it's helping them learn how to, look at it.
What's the biggest stumper a confirmation kid has given you going down a rabbit hole?
Well, the big one that I still can never satisfactorily answer is, who are the Nephilim? That's always like, I don't know. Like, I know what some people say that they are, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There's usually, I've got the big class on the problem of evil, and you talk about, when we talk about Job, like, wait, Satan was talking to God in heaven and he let him do all that stuff? Like, what? Like, yeah. That all of those things that plague, adults, like, it's the same stuff.
That's so who do you think the Nephilim are? No, I'm kidding.
I don't know. I always laugh because I think of the Russell Crowe Noah movie where they were rock giants.
Yeah.
And like, I can't get that out of my head, so I just go, that they were rock giants. Sure. Does it matter? No.
I lean towards the boring and non-supernatural view.
Yeah.
And the only reason I lean towards that view is because the Bible says that everything procreates after its own kind. That everything can procreate after its kind. And angels and humans are not of a kind. They're not of the same kind. So how could they procreate and have...
That makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty sound argument.
It's the only thing. It's literally the only argument that keeps me on the... on that... but, I don't know. Man, kids are crazy. What's the kids say the darndest things? Have you ever had one just let off with something truly unhinged? Like, what's the wildest thing?
I'm sure, it can absolutely come up with something. The one that always pops, it's not unhinged. It was just like, and it's not even a member of my church. We had a family that was visiting because they were in town they were visiting family. And their kids came up to the children's message. So this kid is about 4, and I forget. I don't even remember what the topic was, but I was talking about do we ever do bad things? And yeah, we do. That's called sin. And this kid raises his hand and he goes, I know why we do bad things. It's because of the devil. And he just like yells devil like really loudly. And he goes, and he's down there and he's going to stay down there.
Yeah. All right.
I was like, you say it, kid. Say it with your whole chest. Like, that's.
Yeah.
The devil. That kind of stuff.
Our pastor, he'll be doing the children's talk, and he does this thing where he gives them a bag. And the next week the kid has to bring the bag back with a random item in it, and then he uses that to off the cuff children's sermon based on whatever he's talking about. And you think, boy, that's really, really great, but his secret trick, and don't tell him I told you this.
Is this Joe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. His secret trick is that a lot of times he'll pivot.
Okay.
So he'll be like, oh, a transformer. That's really cool. You know what that reminds me of? And then he could just pivot to whatever he wants. So it's a good little misdirect.
I like it.
But he'll have kids that'll go off and just like start talking. Like he'll ask a question and they're just they're on their way. They're talking about something and they're going on and on. And if ever it's a little boy that is going on and on about something, Joe will look at him and go, do you want to do this job? You can do this.
Here's the vestments. You go now.
Yeah. You do this.
Yeah.
No, it's all funny. We laugh about it. It's all fun and games, but
Right. I usually have to,
Joe's gotten
because
a lot of guys into the ministry. So.
yeah, well, hey, that's great. More power to him. I have to laugh because very often I have, the little girls will always be like, I have to tell you something. I have to ask you a question. And then I go, okay, what? And do you like my dress? It's sparkly. Like, it's just, stuff like
Right,
that.
yeah.
And I have to go, that's great. Can we talk about it later? We have to pray now, kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
like I need to, like, validate them and acknowledge them for wanting to contribute, but also, like, let's keep it on
Stay
Jesus
on
at the moment.
task. Yeah, yeah. And that's a fine line to walk, especially with younger kids, because like you don't want to do damage. You know what I mean? Like you don't
Right.
want to just shut them down. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm usually come find me after service and we could talk about that.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
good.
they do, and then it means that I'm stuck there for a good extra, 5 to 10 minutes after church is over. But that's fine. I don't care.
It's it's the best time to talk to kids, man, when they're that age, because they have this amazing um like internal logic. It's like dream logic that their thoughts kind of follow, and it's always so much fun for me to like my nieces and nephews and the kids at church or whatever to talk to them about stuff and just kind of try and figure out like how are they making the leaps? How are they making
Right.
these connections to things? You know.
Yeah. My own son is almost 4, and so he's kind of getting to that part now where he's starting to make connections in his mind, and he'll bring up something that happened 2 weeks ago, and I've forgotten completely about it, and I go, wait,
Right.
what? Like,
Yeah, and you have
oh,
to wonder, like, he probably also forgot about it until, like, just now something
right.
reminded him, right? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
things are starting to click over. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. My cousin, when he had his kids, they're in their 20s now, I think, or how old are they? No, they're graduating high school, so they're 18.
Okay.
And when he first had his kids, they're twin boys. And I asked him about a year into it. I was like, "Man, how is it? It's been a year. How is it being a dad?" And he said it's kind of like having a dog that just gets smarter every single day.
Right. It's true. It's true. They're growing up and they're getting smart, and you're like, wow, I'm so proud of you. But then also like, oh my gosh, you're getting smart. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And then it's like pretty soon, like you're gonna have a man on your hands.
right, right. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, I've worked with kids my whole career, but it's different when it's my own, because like, the thing about kids at church is eventually, like, at the end of the day, I have to give them back to their parents.
Right.
But like with my own kid, I am the parent. I have to give him back to me. Like,
Yeah.
he's my own. There's nobody else for him to go to unless grandma's visiting. Like, that's it. Like,
So
so it's incredible, like, how much I thought I knew about kids versus actually experiencing it in real time with my own children is like,
yeah,
there's so much that I don't actually know, and it's been good for me to realize that.
yeah, yeah. It's I took a class this last semester on confirmation, specifically in teaching confirmation. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things the instructor drilled home for us was like this idea of like a whole life confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
You start early teaching anything you can, and the goal isn't necessarily to teach more, but to like teach deeper
Mm.
as they get older, like if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he talked about how his kids and his grandkids, by the time they were, 4 or 5 years old, they have the Lord's Prayer, right? They've got that memorized. Do they know what it means? Can they tell you about it? No. But does that really matter at that age? No. Right?
No,
It's like laying foundation, and then we're building over the course of their life. I just kind of wanted to run that by and get your thoughts.
absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. and I see that in my own kids. We say the Lord's Prayer every night before bed. And my son is almost 4, and he can say it. He can say the whole thing. And part of his issue is keeping him on task. Like, you keep your hands folded through the whole thing. We're gonna say it.
Yeah.
Don't start wandering over there. As that. But so he could say it. And then my daughter is 1.5, so she doesn't have all of her words yet, but she does have some. And so you'll hear her hit. It's really funny. Every once in a while she'll get trespasses, and she'll say
Right.
the word trespasses with us, and it's the cutest thing hearing a 1.5-year-old say trespasses. So
there are people that say that you can't teach a kid the Lord's Prayer at 1.5, at 2, at 3, but we're teaching like pre-verbal infants sign language. You know what I mean? Like, how many parents out there teach their kid like the sign for like milk or whatever?
Yeah, please and thank you and all that. We did that too. Yeah. And I agree, like, and this applies to not just like infants and toddlers, but teenagers too. Kids are way smarter than most people give them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, and that's the other thing that I like love about being a DCE and love about the job that I get to do, is that like I get to see regularly how awesome all of the kids can be and how smart they are, and like when they get it, when a light bulb turns on, you're like, yes, like that's such a cool moment. But like it can happen as young as 1 and 2, and even in middle school and high school, they get it. Like they can be taught, and like I think a lot of adults just kind of assume, like they want to assume that kids already know things. Like they're like, you should know this by now. But it's like, well, how are they supposed to know it if nobody ever bothered to teach them?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we had at my last church in New York, we had we would have the teenagers, they would, to get a job, we'd have them help with the custodial stuff at our church. So we had a cleaning crew of teenagers, and we would have some of the ladies in our congregation just get super upset if like something wasn't perfectly clean the way that they wanted it to be clean.
Right.
And I would often have to be like, okay, but did you like teach them how to do that? Like, he's 14. Like, he may not have been ever taught how that goes. Like, if you want to let him know exactly how you want those baseboards cleaned in the sanctuary, like, teach him. Like, he probably could figure it out because he's smart, but if you want it done exactly the way you want to go, you gotta teach him. And generally speaking, for the most part, they are open to instruction and they are open to learning. I've yet to meet a kid that doesn't actually enjoy learning as long as it's done in a way that, speaks to them. They might hate school, but they love learning, and that's a very different thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So with this like holistic approach, I guess, of you want to like always be like teaching ABCs, always be confirming. How do you, with regards to things like, how do you keep confirmation from being like graduating Christianity as a DCE? I'm sure that's something you've spent time thinking about.
Absolutely, yeah. It's probably my biggest like thing that I fight with is when people just treat it as, okay, I've graduated, I've checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
Right. The thing that drove me nuts, and this was a New York thing primarily, was they would talk about, and because Long Island is such a Catholic area, they would talk about making your sacraments, right? Because in the Catholic Church they get communion at like 2 or like second grade, not 2, second grade, like super early, and then so like they make their communion and then they make their confirmation and then like they make like, so they view all of the sacraments as these like check boxes, and so they would you would have people that just like show up to our church, our Lutheran church, but like all they know is Catholic. And they'd be like, okay, I've got to put my son in confirmation because he's old enough now and he's got to make his confirmation and he's got to do it. And anybody who ever said that, like, 7 times out of 10, you would never see them again after confirmation Sunday.
Wow.
Because that was just their attitude. They're like, this is a thing that I have to do because it's like what I was raised with. It's what everybody around me does. It's like they check the box. It means I've done this. It means I'm good. I've fulfilled my obligation to God slash my family slash,
Right.
cultural expectations. And now I can move on with my life and I don't have to think about that anymore. Drives me absolutely insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so part of it is, I think we have done a slight disservice to confirmation in that we put it in June usually, and we make the kids wear robes, and we have a special ceremony. It looks a lot like a graduation when you do it that way,
Mm.
because there's another ceremony that takes place in June where they wear robes, and they
Right.
it's very similar. So, trying to, I think one just like a practical thing is doing it at a different time of year. So in New York, I moved it to the fall. I moved it to Reformation Sunday,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
which was cool. And now here we do it on Palm Sunday.
Okay.
And the reason we do it on Palm Sunday here is so that they can take communion on Maundy Thursday coming up, which
Oh,
is
okay.
always really nice. So that kind of removes it from graduation. But then like the other thing is you have to like have something else for them to do like after,
Mm.
you can't just be like, and now you come to youth group. Well, sure, but like they can also go hang out with other people, you know, like just
Yeah.
hanging out is fine, but it's not like the end all be all. But the kids who, get themselves involved, maybe they want to start helping in the worship service in some way. I have a couple of girls who want to be readers. I have a couple who help out with our, technology. They help run the, slideshow and the soundboard. And, I have some who we have all of our confirmation kids do acolyting. And then there's some who are like, I really like doing this. Can I keep doing it even though I'm not in confirmation anymore? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep lighting candles. It's
Yeah.
great.
Stay involved.
We only have 2 candles, so it's not hard. Go for it. Except at Christmas, then we have 6.
Right.
um,
I, th- I think it's interesting that note that like we dress it up exactly like graduation,
mhm.
time it with graduation, and then we're like, why do these kids think it's a graduation?
I know. So it's yeah, kind of a thing. The last couple of years, we haven't even had them wear robes on confirmation, um, and that was primarily because most of the kids that got confirmed were late service kids,
Hmm.
where so things are slightly less formal.
Sure.
Then they still looked nice. I made sure that they weren't wearing holy jeans or anything like that, but um, so yeah, it ended up not being a big deal. Um, I think people can make a big deal out of stuff like that, and it's like, okay, but you'd rather them make a confession of faith than not, right?
Yeah.
So let's maybe remove a couple of obstacles to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be a constant struggle as long as the world is vying for their attention. The pressures of school and their friends and sports and all these other things. It's always going to be hard to have them see that being a part of a church community is a priority. Um, but like I said, I keep showing up, so I'll be here whenever you want to come. Like, let's go.
How do you combat that, man? Because like one of the hardest things is when parents put their kids in like travel ball, and it's like every game is on a Sunday. We have one guy. He's on our church council, and his son does like little league travel ball. Every time of the year, he's doing a different sport, but he makes his kid go to church. And if they're going to miss church for a game, he finds like a church that has like an early morning or a late Saturday night service and they go.
Good.
So, I
Good.
mean, how do you get parents to prioritize church, you know? Because if they don't, their kids won't.
Right, and that's the thing, right? And I think a lot of parents don't realize exactly how much of an impact that they have on that. They say, well, my kid wants to be in, travel volleyball, so I guess that's what we have to do. And it's like, well, no, you're the parents. You can
Right.
say no, right? Like
You
like
just got this little 4'5" dictator running the house.
and I totally understand the struggle. Like my son yesterday asked to our school has this little soccer program, and he asked to be a part of that. And it's like we would have to pay extra money to do it, and I'm not sure we have it in the budget right now, but I'm like, how do I tell him that I can't afford to do this right now? And it
Hmm.
like the struggle with it is rough. Like I get how rough parents have it sometimes. Like saying no is hard to do. Like I don't discount that at all. But I think a lot of parents don't even try.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like they give an effort. They go with whatever their kid wants to do. And they're like, we will adapt and we will adjust everything around them,
Hmm.
when it should be the kids adjust everything around you. I think my parents did a decent job of that. I was in marching band in high school, which took up a lot of time during the week, but it never took up a Sunday. And I think that was probably why my parents were okay with it, because they were like, as
Hmm.
long as you're still coming to church with us, you know, like that's a priority. And they
Yeah.
they made sure that was clear from day one. So I'm trying to make sure my kids know from day one, church is a priority. We always go to church. Um, and I'll let you know. We'll have to revisit in a few years, and I'll let you know how I'm doing on that.
Sure. Yeah. I remember my brother when he first became a dad. This was 6 or 7 years ago now. Um, and they were just for the first 4 or 5 months, they were just having the hardest time with this kid.
Mm.
Until finally they went to my mom and they were like, "What are we doing wrong here with this? He never naps when he needs to. He's always awake at the wrong time, and all this. What are we doing here?" And my mom told him, "Look, y'all have been here. Y'all have been here. The kid
Mm.
just got here. The
Yeah.
kid adapts to you. You don't adapt to the kid, right? He's joining you. You're not
Mm-hmm.
joining him. And so you have to like approach it that way. And they like God bless them. They have kept that mentality throughout this kid's entire 6 or 7 years, man. And it's wild. He's old enough now to like talk and have conversations and whatever, and he'll want to go play something or do something. And my brother will just say, "Hey, that's not what we're doing right now, buddy." And he's like, "Oh,
Mm.
okay." And that's it, you know?
Cool. Yeah, I think.
It's
So yeah, I think sometimes so that to me says there are some parents that just don't try, right? Like they don't want to give it a shot of trying to make sure that the kid is adapting to their schedule. They're like, I need to give them everything because I didn't have everything when I was a kid. Um, that's a real temptation, but at
yeah.
the same time, we have to be like, okay, but like the sports thing, to circle back on that, like, so many people treat their kids like they're gonna grow up and become a superstar NFL athlete, and
Yeah.
you know, and many kids who live in Houston, Texas will. Like, this is a hotbed of football recruiting down here, right?
Hmm.
And I go, you know, okay, there's probably a 1-2% chance that your son makes it to the NFL. Probably a
Yeah.
higher percentage that they will play in college, which everyone likes better. But there's that. But like, there's a 100% chance that they will be judged on the last day when Christ returns. Right?
Right.
Like, that is a
Yeah.
guarantee.
Yeah.
And what are we doing about that? Like, that should be the most important thing. And I love sports. Like, I love football. I'm a huge football fan. I love going to football games. I love watching football. It's great. Um, it's not more important than Jesus.
Right.
And I have to keep saying that, and I will say it till I'm blue in the face.
It's
Um,
it's something I think I've probably talked about it in record interviews. I've been recording a lot for this next season. I don't think I've released anything where I've expressed this thought yet, but I have recorded a lot of interviews, and I think quite a few times now this season I have probably said something to the effect of, we don't even look at nearby churches when we're sending our kids off to college.
mm,
It's not even a factor
yeah.
in the math when we're sending our kids off. We're sending them first off. I would be nervous to send my kid away from home, that like far away from home for an education like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to like not even have a church set up, like we like the looking for a good church for your kid to go to on Sunday while they're away at college should probably be like your first consideration as a Christian parent.
Mm-hmm.
Is where will they be fed spiritually? Where will they be nourished spiritually? Before anything else. But we don't even like, it doesn't even occur to people. And when you bring it
Yeah.
up, people think you're crazy.
Right. Right. We had a program at my church in New York where we actually had a fund that was set up for scholarships for kids going off to college. And in order to take advantage of those funds, they had to sit through a class with me about, keeping your faith going in college, and like make a plan of like what church are you going to go to and how are you gonna,
Yeah.
how are you going to follow up on these things. And that was a requirement of them receiving those scholarship funds, was for them to do that. I don't have that now. I will say, a lot of the kids from my church have been going to Texas A&M, and there is a strong Lutheran presence at Texas A&M University.
Nice.
So anybody listening to this podcast, if you want, like, I could hook you up with Lutherans at Texas A&M. I know some of them. It's great. So there
That's
you go.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a buddy of mine. He's a pastor up in Lynchburg, Virginia, and right Liberty University, Jerry
Mhm.
Falwell, all that. And he has quite the college age sort of group going. And they're all like Liberty students, And so
Mm.
you have like Baptists from all over the world coming to, Baptist Mecca, Liberty University.
Right.
And they end up getting invited to some weird liturgical thing that they've never been to before. And it like opens their eyes. And now he's got like this whole little group of like hardcore catechized Lutheran college students.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. We the first time we ever went to his church, we were up there. I have a lot of family in Lynchburg, and the first time we
Okay.
were ever visiting his church, we went up there, and on his church sign, he just had baptism saves, like right here in the middle of Baptist country. And I was like, "Yep, great."
I love that. I love that. Oh, that reminds me. I drove by. I'm about to go on a rant. Maybe, I don't know. What
That's
was
fine.
I almost got out of the car because we have a Lutheran camp down here in Texas, Camp Lone Star,
Uh huh.
and we go there every year for a confirmation retreat, which is great, and I love it. There is an ELCA church not far up the road,
Mm.
and we were leaving, and this is the only reason I didn't stop, is because we were leaving and I was exhausted and I had to get the kids home. But we drove by this ELCA church, and their sign said, on the ELCA church, it said, "Baptism is an outward sign of an inward reality." And I was like, "Are you
Oh.
kidding me?" Like,
Oh.
I I almost stopped the car, and I was like, "I need to go talk to this pastor or something." But I was like, "No, I got to get the kids home. It's not." It's
Oh.
like, "Oh, you've been influenced in the wrong direction."
Oh, I mean, I could have told you that about the ELCA though.
I know,
mean,
but
they've
I
been-
know, but like just seeing it, like I expect that out of a Baptist church,
yeah,
you know. But still, I was just like,
yeah. Can they
oh,
at least pretend to be Lutheran? Gee.
right. Yeah, have we made any progress on that petition to change the L in their name to something different?
Okay. I think it's going to drop naturally. I think it's
Yeah,
going to come out naturally. Yeah.
this is gonna be
Um,
the ECA.
something.
Mm.
Or like maybe the EAC, the Evangelical American Church, or something
Mm.
like that. But I really do think that L is going to drop sooner than later. I think they actually, one of their own people did put forward a thing about it. There was some ELCA meeting, committee meeting, something somewhere that Bishop Eaton was a part of, where they actually did discuss removing Lutheran from the name to be more ecumenical.
Great, go for it.
So
Have fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll be a great day.
Yeah, Lutheran Twitter will be on fire that day. That'll be.
Oh yeah, overjoyed, overjoyed. Which Lutheran Twitter's on fire most days, but like it's the
This
wrong
is true.
it's the wrong
That's true.
kind of fire.
Lutheran Twitter is the only reason I'm still on Twitter.
Oh man, gosh, I wanna leave Twitter so often.
Yeah,
It's
but then you have like right now, like I follow Don Stein.
I love Don.
He's great. He's posting something from the Formula of Concord every single
Yeah,
day, and I'm
yeah,
like, I love this. This is great. Like,
yeah. Great thread.
keeping me
Great
on
dude.
Twitter.
He's actually going to be my very first interview this season.
Awesome.
2 weeks from now.
Okay, cool.
It
Look
drops.
forward to it.
Yeah, love Don. So how do you put together a Bible study? You mentioned that sometimes you got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it?
I the way that we do it around here is we're trying to go through just like books. So right now we have a Tuesday morning Bible study for our retirees, those who don't work, and they are going through the book of Joshua, and so it's we read part of the book of Joshua and then we dive into it, and it is such that it usually will take us 2 or 3 weeks to get through a chapter because we talk about something that leads to another thing that leads to another thing, and those rabbit holes that are so prevalent in confirmation are also there with the adults, right? So
Sure.
so it's we have a big, like, I try to come prepped with where could they go, like what questions could they ask here, right? So like when we just talked about, we just got through the fall of Ai, so shortly after Jericho, they rout Jericho, and then they everything's great except Achan stole some stuff, so then they lose the next battle, right? And just like the implications of, well, why did God care so much about the devoted things, and why was that such a big deal, and why did they have to brutally destroy everybody in the city? Why is God's mean like that, right? Like that kind of stuff, and like it'll take weeks to talk about some of those things, and it's like, let's talk about justice. Let's talk about, the fact that the people of Jericho and I were doing some horrific stuff and
Yeah.
really needed to not influence the people of Israel, and then they did anyway, and it was like so I try to come prepped with as much as I can, but it's really a lot of like, here's the Bible. I've got the Luther, we use, everybody's got a Lutheran study Bible in our, whether they've
Yeah.
got one of their own or we've got a bunch, so they can look at the same study notes that I look at, and like then I will be like, okay, so here's outside sources from that I can bring in to kind of explain those things a little bit, but it kind of helps them to look at some of those things. I love the Lutheran Study Bible. I think it's great. And so we'll talk about the notes, and we'll talk about that, and we'll see how long it takes us to get through Joshua. So in the hour that we have, if we only get through a couple of verses, and that's what we do. So
Do you have you ever been putting it together and been thinking like, yeah, this is the question they're definitely going to ask. This is the thing they're going to get hung up on. And
Mm-hmm.
so you really prep for that. And then they're
Yep.
just like, no, that's fine. And they blow right by it.
Oh yeah, totally. Um, I forget when this happened. Most recently, it was I think a we were something it had to do with baptism, and I was just waiting for those who had a Baptist background to kind of come forward with the okay, but like bringing up all of the Baptist arguments, but we had just
Right.
kind of done it relatively recently because my pastor went through a whole series on different denominations, so we did that. But so I was like ready to like argue about baptism with people, and then they like nobody was argumentative that day, and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
You're like trying to like start a fight.
Right.
Like,
Like,
Jim,
don't
what
you
they
want?
teach when you were growing up.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. What's your favorite part of being a DCE?
It really is like the just the people, like the people are the hardest part and also my favorite part, right? Like I often jokingly say, ministry would be so easy if it weren't for the people. Like, like, like,
100%.
I say that often, but like, it's true. Like, but like, this is kind of like what we were created for.
Mm,
Like, we were created to be together, right? Like, the biggest thing, the first problem with creation was that Adam was by himself, right? So like,
yeah.
we were meant to have other people, not just marriage, but also like just people in general. And so we were created to be with others and to do life together. And like when Jesus established the church and on Pentecost, like they were always together, they were always talking with each other and you know doing all that stuff. And so I love doing that, even though like it gets hard sometimes because you have people that like the hard things that they go through, and then like when you get treated like garbage because they don't understand. There are people who will betray you, and there are people who will, as much as you've talked to them about so many things, they won't come the next week or whatever, and they like it hurts, and like people will just leave, and they'll decide they don't like it here anymore, and they'll go somewhere else, and it's sad. Um, not, and I haven't even gotten into like church politics and conflict and all that. Like that's a whole
Yeah.
other. That's a book I'm going to write someday. I think is church conflict because I've seen a lot of it. But um, it just like so people are really hard, but like they're also the best. Like
Yeah. Yeah. When you when you see what you're doing, make a difference.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I like when a kid like makes a connection in confirmation class. They're like, oh, like that's why you said that. I'm like, yes, that's why I said that. Like, like the light bulb moments are so like cathartic. Like just like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Jesus, they got it. Like, like I know that like and like especially like I know that like it wasn't necessarily because of me that they got it. You know what I mean? Like God is using me to teach them, and I'm happy to do it. But like when it's like, oh yeah, like the Spirit has like worked in their heart and they've understood something. Like you go, God, like it's so
Yeah.
cool when you do stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
yeah, I love
It's
that, man.
and it's oftentimes too where it's like um you you're up here doing this thing. God has you in this place. You're called to this ministry. You're doing this thing. Uh, and like I don't know. For me anyway, it feels a lot of times like I'm like, man, um, like when you see God do something and really work, it almost feels like God's doing it like in spite of me, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah,
And
for
it's
sure.
like it's like, man, like God is just really out here using whatever vessel he gets his hands on to do whatever work he needs done. And it's like he can't be stopped, you know? Like he's God or something.
Right, exactly. I can't tell you the number of Sundays that like Pastor and I have both like shown up in the morning and we're both like, I'm not feeling it today. Like it,
Yeah.
today's gonna be rough. Like we just kind of got to get through it. And then like we get to the end of the morning, and usually we're like, that was one of the best like
Yeah.
Sundays we've had in a while. Like worship was really good, and the hymns were awesome, and the like. Pastor's like I don't really. Sometimes he'll be like, I don't even really know what I preached, but like everybody said it was good. Like that kind of stuff. Like it just like usually it's like when we're not feeling it, like then I think we get out of our own way and we realize like how
Yeah.
much God is doing,
Doing
and
the thing. Yeah.
it's just so cool.
And like how comforting too, knowing that like God is going to do his work, you know, regardless. You know, he's the operating force, you know.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. Ryan, thank you so much for coming by.
Absolutely, man. This has been great. I love
It's a
talking
good
about
time.
church. This is fun.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome back anytime. Anytime you want to come on, we can chat about whatever.
Sure
Church
thing.
conflict.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it. Oh man, we don't have time to get into it, but like, whoo, I've been
Yeah.
through I've been through some doozies. So
Well, you know, we're all just a bunch of sinners, you know.
right. I thought about. We were a couple weeks ago. We've been talking about like heroes of faith. That's been our current
Mhm.
sermon thing recently, and we did Samson a few weeks ago. And I'm like, I got to come up with a children's message for Samson. and and like Pastor's point that he was making was like Samson is like a jerk. Like he's such a
Yeah,
terrible
not a good
guy.
dude.
He's not a good dude, and God uses him anyway. So I was like, okay. So when I do the children's, I didn't end up doing this, but I thought about like getting up there, sitting down, and being like, "What's up, sinners?" Like just like starting, but like the young kids would have just like not gotten that at all. Like it just
Yeah.
like, but like
I
that's how it is, right? Like we're just like God is doing great stuff, and we just gotta let him.
I remember Samson was it was definitely I want to say I had started seminary and I was reading through, and I get to like the end where he's blind and he's like, pushing the wheel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting to that point and thinking like, he kind of earned it, bro. Like dude was a jerk. Like he
Yeah.
was absolutely not, because I think we have this tendency to play him up as some kind of like Hebrew superhero.
Mm-hmm.
But like he was actually a huge dick.
Yep. Yep. Really. And well, and that was so Pastor's point. I'm going to sum up his sermon that he made, but it was a really good point that I never really thought of before. Samson's whole life, he would look at something and he'd go for it. Like Delilah, she
Yeah.
looks great. I want her. The other woman that he married, she looks great. You know, that lion, you know, I'm gonna eat that honey. You know, whatever he
Yeah.
saw, he went after. It was only after he couldn't see anymore that he realized that he needed to follow what God was doing.
Yeah.
And it took his eyes getting gouged out. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Like that's me too. I need to not look at stuff like God, like I don't even want my eyes gouged out, but like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
God, your vision, not mine, basically. So
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna
Yeah.
actually steal that and
yeah,
next time-
write that one down.
Yeah, I really am. Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much, man.
You bet.